So hello everyone and welcome to Quick Start using the Write button with me, Dahlia. Here with me today are my lovely co-hosts Manon and Thomas. They'll be having an eye on the chat for me. These Quick Start sessions are designed for those of you who are new to Sudowrite or returning after a long break and want to get up to speed. Step by step, you'll learn the essential basics to start using Sudowrite's features effectively. In this session, I'll provide an overview of how to use the write button in Sudowrite. You'll learn how to use both auto and guided write to develop your story and overcome writer's block. And so that you can focus on listening rather than rushing to take notes, I prepared a class document with all the key information I'll be sharing today. And I just put it in the chat. This class will be divided in two parts. The first portion will be more of a lecture where we'll cover the essentials of the write settings, auto write, guided write, and tone shift. And then we'll have a live walkthrough of my approach to the write button in action. And at the end, we will also having a Q&A session where you can ask any remaining questions. So let's start with why I'm hosting this class. The write button is a powerful tool that often gets overlooked in favor of the draft feature. But since writers have different approaches to writing, using draft isn't the right fit for everyone. For example, I'm a planner, which means that I like some planning, but don't enjoy outlining every detail. When I start writing a chapter, I may not even know how it will end. Because of that, the idea of generating a whole scene or chapter in one go has always felt too restrictive to me. Thankfully, the write button is perfect for writers like me who prefer more flexibility. While draft is a dream tool for plotters, write is a deal for pantsers. You can simply start writing and see where it takes you, even if you have no idea where you're headed. Write doesn't need super detailed scene directions. A vague idea is totally enough. Or you can just hand the wheel over to the AI and see where it takes you. But write is not just for pantsers. Since it's connected to the story Bible, it understands the story you're writing. And with guided write, you can steer it in the direction you want. This makes it useful for plotters as well, especially if you want to do most of the writing yourself. In that case, the write button acts as your junior writer, jumping in when you're stuck or need to fill in gaps you don't feel like writing yourself. All in all, it's a very versatile tool that adapts to the different writing styles, and I'm very excited to show you how to use it. Essentially, write works by reading the text before the cursor and continuing it logically while considering your prompt, instructions, and if activated, your story Bible. Write has a readback window of 1,000 words. In some models with large context windows like the Claude 3s, Write can read up to 20,000 words back. This helps maintain consistency and allows the AI to adapt to your style if you edit along the way. However, since credit costs depend on how much the AI reads and writes, a long readback can be expensive. So highlighting only the necessary portions will reduce input size and save credits. When the story Bible is activated, Write pulls in context such as style, genre, a chapter summary if a chapter is linked, and characters and world building. The AI uses all world building cards as context and includes any character whose name partially appears in your text. For example, if a character is named Guillermo de la Cruz, the system may also pull in details about his mother, Silvia de la Cruz, whenever it detects de la or Cruz, or it may pull in any character who has a de or a la in the text. If you're writing in Spanish, it could just pull the characters in if you're just using normal sentences. So to avoid spoiler or unnecessary details and pulled in, make sure that the AI only accesses information the POV character should know. Like with readback, hiding irrelevant cards or traits reduces the AI's input, and this helps to lower credit costs. So now that we covered the fundamentals, let's switch over to Sudowrite and take a look at the right settings. You find the right settings up here when you click on the little arrow and down here. Creativity helps you to adjust how closely the AI sticks to the source text or your prompt versus how much creative freedom it takes. It will bring in newer and fresher ideas if you have it on most, but if you want it to follow your prompt closely, it's better to have it on least. But that's something you can ideally experiment with to see what suits your writing best. With the number of cards, you can decide how many variations of cards you'll get generated every time you hit the right button. You can go from 1 to 6. Something to keep in mind is even if you do not use the cards, every variation that gets generated will cost you credits. I usually just have it set on 1 when I'm in writing mode. When I brainstorm stuff, I'm not sure how to proceed. I may go anywhere between 3 or 6. Length of cards gives you the power to set the word count for your output that you would like to have. It's approximate since AI is not that good at counting words. So you won't get exactly 150 or 200 words, but it will be somewhere like plus or minus 25 words-ish, what you would get. This is also something that you can adapt to your writing style, whether you like a lot of short cards or essentially almost, I'd say that should be like 2 pages. That's all up to you how much you want to have generated before you manually edit. The prose mode lets you choose between different AI models. I will just look at this in a moment in more detail. And this box at the bottom is key details. It allows you to add context or instructions to your auto-write when you use it in the auto-write mode, because you have different modes here. And if you have auto-write, it looks at this key details where you can give it up to 400 characters of context or instructions that will be taken into account. Something like the POV you're writing from is a good idea, or any kind of context about like the time or the setting. That can all go in there. Are there any questions so far about the right settings?
Everything is clear in chat right now.
Awesome.
Hold on. Can you use the key details to keep it shorter and tighter?
Okay, the key you can use this to influence the style. Like you can say it, use short sentences or something along the lines. But if you have the story Bible toggled on, it will also read the style box. So you could also put style information down here so that you can tell it what kind of prose you want to get out of it. I hope this answered the questions. Any more questions?
Are you going to explain the credit in that class, Dahlia?
I can go over it for shortly. Quickly was the word I was looking for. The credits are like the currency of Sudowrite. You can see here how many credits you have still left and what you use them on. See? Oh, and you can also, now I clicked on this, I didn't intend to click on it. Whatever. You can also, if you want to buy additional credits, if you run out of credits. Essentially everything or almost everything you generate in Sudowrite will cost you credits. And in regards of the write button, that is highly influenced by the prose mode that you use, which is the next thing we'll be looking at. Since you can see here, like a rough estimate of how expensive this model is compared to other models. In this case, basic is a model that gives you good quality and is quite economical while doing this. So it's $1 sign. On the other end of the spectrum, it's not up there anymore. There used to be down here, so it's not here. Premium, which is very, very expensive model. And the credit cost is one thing to look at when you're deciding which model to use. But the other, and maybe more important thing, is the prose quality, how well it follows instructions, and how unfiltered it writes. And to get an idea about the quality of the prose, you will have a writing sample for every one of the standard models, which are those three up top, with Muse being the new standard model and the first one that was trained by Sudowrite for fiction. Other models here of the standard models are Excellent, which is based on Claude 3.7 Sonnet. And in these other models, you also can see the base model that is used, like here, it's GPT-4o Mini. But since Muse, it's its own model, it doesn't have the little base model box. As you may have noticed here, Excellent has this little button for being multilingual. Not all of the models are equal when it comes to write languages other than English. So in case you're not writing in English, that's something to keep an eye on. Muse, for example, is currently not multilingual, but a lot of the models like Excellent and Basic are working well with different languages. And here under the advanced tabs, you'll find some older models under the retired tab and some newer experimental models that have not been refined, are not as refined as the standard prose models. But you can also feel free to experiment with these models if for some reason you don't like what you're getting with the top three. For today's session, I want to use the new Muse to see how well this works in Write. But a common question I get is which model to use. It's the best model to use for writing, and that's really something that depends a lot on your personal style. Since I personally write in German, I prefer using Excellent since this gives me the best prose when I'm writing in German and has a good balance between structure and creativity. But for the stuff in English, I've also seen great results with Muse. And Basic is also a good model to start out with when you're new because it's rather cheap, so you can try out different promptings and see how well you can use the software without burning through too many credits. Any questions about the models?
The only thing we had was about the unfiltered is meaning spicy content, and I answered that. Yes, it's spicy, violence, monster.
Yes, exactly. It's everything that the standard GPT of chat models may deem a content violation, basically. I mean, ChatGPT got a bit better in these terms, but generally you can write like spicy violence and all that stuff without a problem using Sudowrite.
Yeah, and I want to show that it's not just the unfilter as the one which is the advanced version, but it's that one there where your cursor is.
Yeah, it's this. This gives you an indication how unfiltered a model is. Like Muse is 100% unfiltered because Sudowrite trained it itself. That's it. Themselves. Excellent is a little bit filtered since the Claude models like to clutch their pearls. And same with Basic. Okay. If there are no further questions, I think we're ready to move on to the different writing modes that you can find here. We have auto write, guided write, and tone shift. Auto write is, as the prompt already said, basically autocomplete plus magic. It continues your story logically based on the existing context. Guided write, on the other hand, lets you provide specific instructions. This little box was recently upgraded, and now you can put up to 2,500 characters in here for most models. For some of the experimental models, it can only hold 500 characters. And you can use the guided write instructions to steer the writing in a particular direction. And what's also nice, if a guided write prompt isn't detailed enough, it used to be a problem when the box, at times when the box was smaller. Now it's not so much a problem anymore, but you can still rely on the AI looking at your outline if the chapter is linked for context. And this will help it to stay on track. The same applies to auto-write. If a chapter summary is linked, auto-write will use it as a guide. However, since this is usually a bit more vague than a specific instruction, it allows a bit more creative freedom compared to guided write. And you can see up here whether a chapter is linked or not. Here you can see it's linked to the first chapter. If you unlink it, it says not an outline. In this case, it wouldn't see anything from the outline. Therefore, we come back, update it, and link it to the first chapter so that it will see the chapter summary once we start writing. There's also this feature, which is called tone shift, which adjusts the tone of a scene. For example, it would change a lighthearted moment to something ominous. And while this feature can be helpful, I personally prefer using guided write for tone changes, as it gives more control over the final result, and you can just add in, like, change the atmosphere to be more ominous as a prompt, and that also works well. Any questions about this?
Chapter summary. Oh, okay. Outline section, right? How does the scene box affect it? Did she jump?
The scene box, with scene box, is this box meant with scene box? Because since this is new, can you give me further?
There was a question. Should I probably see all those boxes in the top? Can you please be more precise, Mika?
Anyway, like if it's this box, in case this box is meant, this isn't looked at all by Write. It just looks at this box down here.
She's that her question. It says say you have already written a chapter and wants to do a rewrite. A section of it.
In that case, you could, there's also the possibility to use different tools for that. We have rewrite here.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could use, would need some, I just head over to this little thing that I wanted to show you later, where you can just highlight a section, and then you can use quick edit and tell it how you want the section to be rewritten. That is also a possibility. You could also just go into the text and, for example, now I have to close this. Let's say you don't like this part, then you would just delete the section you don't like, put it here, and then use guided write and tell it how you would like to change what's following.
Yeah, that's a question we have a lot of way to work with.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you could do for this. And a lot of tools that could work, depending. But it's also something I like to use Write for if I'm in a chapter and there's something that's missing. I just put it in there and then say how I want the next scene to look like, and then let it write me a new scene, and then I can like either replace the old part or go ahead and mix them up. But there are a lot of tools you could use for fixing something you have already written. But that's leading us a bit away from what we are talking about right now. Are there any questions about auto write and guided write? In general?
Seems to be good. If there's something, we'll let you know.
Awesome. Okay, then let us now jump into our example project and see how Write works in action. This little example is one we worked on 2 weeks ago in our Story Bible class. It's called Time is Love, and the pitch is when Mia returns to her hometown to take over her late grandmother's cafe, she unexpectedly reunites with her first love, Raphael, the boy who vanished without a trace years ago. But Raphael has changed. He no longer ages and harbors a supernatural secret. Can they overcome the past, or will this curse tear them apart again? This is our little concept that we'll be working with. And I'll show you how I would just start writing the chapter. In the past, you needed at least 50 words before the cursor for the right button to work. That's no longer the case. Right now works even on an empty document. However, the documentation still recommends having some text before the cursor for better results. Personally, I struggle the most with the beginnings and finding the perfect first paragraph. That's why I like to hand the reins to auto-write and let it surprise me. And that's worked well with most models. And we will see how well this will work with Muse today. And I usually set creativity to 50% to generate some fresher, more unique ideas for the beginning. This can sometimes lead to the AI skipping parts of the chapter summary and instead focusing on the most engaging elements to hook the reader. And if something crucial to the plot gets left out, I shuffle the beats or chapter summary so the key details appear later in the chapter. If you want the AI to stick more closely to the chapter summary, you can try lowering the creativity setting or using guided write to shape the beginning of your chapter more intentionally. Since I'm this time just looking for a beginning that should hook me, I just set it to 100 words. And I want a few more variations and tell it that it's written from Mia's POV. And give me a killer opening that instantly hooks the reader. That's something that works quite well for most models. Then you can just click here and it will start writing over here. And here you just saw this little pop-up that was how much credits the generation cost, but you can always go and check here how much our variations for the beginning costed us. And up here, oh, this is the history column, and here all the write cards appear. And these little things are called chiclets. They're like small tags on the write cards that show which context elements the AI used to generate the output. In this case, it looks at Mia, our main character, at her Aunt Martha, at Mia's hometown, the first chapter, genre and style. And then it gave us a variation of different cards. The first is Mia was 6 when she decided the cafe smelled best on rainy days. She'd sit by the window, sipping chocolate milk and watching drops race down the glass. That's nice. Oh, I like this one. Cedar Grove was just as Mia Montgomery had left it, stubbornly picturesque with the same charming defiance that made leaving so hard. That's a really nice first sentence. Mia Montgomery's breath fogged the car window as she slowed to a stop on Cedar Grove's familiar main street. It's nice. This one's also, I have to say that Muse is really good with giving us openings that are fresh compared to what you would get with a different model. Windows. But knowing how I to, like what guided write prompts I have prepared, I would go with this beginning. Just grab this lovely first sentence. Cedar Grove was just as remembered. Leaving so. Yeah, usually I would go and take my time to read through all the cards and see which portions I would want to keep. Since usually if you have several cards, you have several good ideas. And that often help to get a really nice mix beginnings page. I just noticed that there was something else I wanted to show you. Where was it? This was the one. If you use this little insert button, the words that you've inserted are all this little purple color until you edit it. And once you've edited this, it turns black. This is good to know which parts of the text are still like the AI generated it. And this way you can distinguish it from your own writing and the stuff that you have already touched upon. You can also go and copy the card if you want to put it somewhere else. You can thumb it down or up in case there's something incredibly good or something that you didn't like at all, or there's some like error message or something. In that case, you would thumb it down. If you like something particularly, you can click on this little button. And sometimes because of the size of my mouse, I have a hard time hitting it, and looks like I'm not finding the favorite button this time. But if you're better at this than me, you would find your favorited text boxes here on this little tab. But I made the button, not the button, the mouse a bit bigger so that you can see it, so it's now unable to hit the thing. Sad. But anyway, this way you can put the stuff that's popped up here in your document. You can also, if you click here, you can make it smaller so that it's not making this side of the history very busy. And you can also delete cards, but when you do this, they're really gone. And I don't want to lose stuff, so I never deleted it. If this gets too busy, I just switch here where that's empty. But now we have a beginning. This is the moment where I usually switch to guided write with 0 creativity. Since once I have my opening line, I just want the AI to follow my instructions as closely as possible. And I usually go down to 1 card and make this a bit bigger. In the older days, beats, I often, Mana, you raised your hand.
Yeah, it's a bit of a sidetrack there. I tried to find one of my projects with those chiclets. I know you had some on your screen earlier. Can you show what the chiclets are again, please?
This here?
Yeah. Those are the.
And these are the chiclets, and they tell you the context that was read for the creation of the card. In this case, these two character cards, this world building card, we have only one world building card in the project, so that's all that's gone into red. The outline that was linked, and genre and style. This is also good to double check, especially if you have bigger projects, whether you have any information still visible that shouldn't be visible. In that case, you could go, for example, if you don't want Martha Montgomery to be mentioned, whenever Mia is mentioned, you could go and hide her card here. But for this first chapter, we need the information about Martha anyway, so we just can keep her visible. As you can also see, only Mia and Martha were pulled in since they are, or rather, Mia Montgomery is the only character that's named here in the chapter summary, and it's going from what it finds in here. And you also have Martha in it. So these are the only cards it's looking at. Okay. So much about chiclets. Going back to guided write. In the old days, I often based my guided write prompts on the beats that you could generate. Now this has changed a couple of weeks ago to scenes, but you can also use the scenes in conjunction with the chapter summary to create your guided write prompts. These were the scenes that were generated for the first chapter. Like Mia Montgomery drives through Cedar Grove on a crisp autumn morning, her gaze fixed on the familiar yet altered storefronts of Main Street, yada, yada, yada. And I usually structure my guided write prompts a bit more like this. I start with the POV, in this case, like Mia's deep third person POV. And then I use more of an imperative language, like describe Mia Montgomery driving through Cedar Grove, show how the familiar storefronts of Main Street have changed, include sensory details, and sometimes also instructions like focus, highlight the cozy nostalgic atmosphere, but hint at Raphael's mysterious disappearance to add a shadow to Mia's fondness. I usually leave it like this, as couples, like the information about the POV, the focus, and a couple sentences of instructions. And this approach helps to keep the AI aligned with my vision, while still allowing some flexibility where needed. And in this case, I'm very curious to see how Muse will work with this kind of prompt, since it's very depending on the model, how well they go with which kind of prompting you use. But I would use now the first little prompt for the beginning. Switch over to our project, put the cursor right after our first sentence. Go in here, put it in the box, say go, and let the magic happen. And while the magic is happening, which usually takes a little while, oh, no, it's that fast. Let's look at this. As it drives down this. I have to say, I'm not quite impressed by the first sentence. So maybe that.
Why?
Hmm?
Why are you not impressed
Yeah,
with the sentence?
it's just, I don't know, it's not very hooky. I don't know.
So how can we fix that?
Yeah, I think it's a bit more tally than showy. That's something I would usually fix with rewrite. But let's just take a, oh no. I had the cursor at the wrong place. Insert this here. Again, and now I also notice that it has the wrong tense and POV. Muse is not doing what it's supposed to do. Let's take a back. Deep third person POV. Maybe I have to tell it that it's past tense. Yeah, that's also one part of working with AI, is that it's sometimes not giving you what you're expecting. And in that case, I would add this here, and also something I like to use is prefer showing over telling, hoping that it catches on, that it should give me a bit more. Maybe here. Come on, show my avant-garde writing whispers. Let's see if this works better. Since this part, it reads a bit more like it's a summary in on itself. So let's experiment a bit with what works best for Muse. This is the workshop portion of this class, so some things aren't always working as intended. Let's see. Go. And while I'm at it, are there any questions? Since we're nearing, why is it not working?
Wow, we're pretty much on top of the chat.
Mm-hmm. This is very weird about Muse. I will just thumb that down and also thumb this one down, because it looks like the first part is just some, how to say, summary. And then, yeah, that's a summary of the chapter. Wait, that is exactly the summary of the chapter, isn't it?
Don't turn me right.
Yes.
It is.
Yeah. Okay, so we found a bug from Muse in Write. That's also something good we did today.
The tone shift would work better on it.
Maybe. I wonder. But let's.
Yeah, it doesn't give you that
See.
killer hooks for starter.
I guess, but this is only for auto mode. And since we were in guided mode, it wasn't looking at this anyway. But let's see if Excellent does a better job at giving us the beginning. If not, then there's something broken in Write. Which sometimes happens, and preferably on weekends.
Ah, that's changing.
Ah, yes. So I'm not sure why it has this thing where it just copies the first part. That's a bit weird. It usually is not doing this.
Actually, I see that a lot in my writing, is going to take the sentence on the top of the chapter and put it in the card.
Yeah.
As long as it's making sense after that. So
yeah,
I
as long as it makes sense. So
it took off that long description kind of thing.
yes. I mean, it looks definitely better than what we got before. Her fingers gripped the steering wheel tighter as she navigated the familiar curves of Main Street. Through her open window, the crisp autumn air carried the earthy scent of fallen leaves and something sweetly familiar. Cinnamon and butter from Peterson's Bakery, still opening at dawn after all these years.
Yeah, that's better.
This is sweet. That is definitely better. Oh, this is also nice.
Yeah. Which model did you use?
This is now excellent. Excellent. Yeah. I like this notion with that Morton and daughter instead of Morton of son, that it really made something about the subtle changes in the town.
Mm. You used Muse before. What was the toggle on the creativity on Muse?
Muse was unleashed.
On the list, and it was still okay. It was maybe too boring. That's why I was doing that description. So sometimes toggle it to a bit more. He might have gave you what you're looking for.
Yeah. But we got a decent card out of it now.
Yep.
Let's take a look at the credits. It's not bad. I mean, it's a bit of a more pricey model. We can take a look at maybe as a comparison. It's also quite interesting to look what the same prompt basically would have done with it. This is also nice to see when you knew how to see and figure out which model is the one that works best for you. So, and then you have the opportunity to just mix and match the different versions of cards you got. As you can see, it really seems to have this thing. Maybe it didn't notice it so far because usually I have more than just one sentence, but it did pick this up as well. Mm-hmm. And basic doesn't sound bad either.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's a bit higher, but it's there.
Yeah, it's a bit more straightforward in the feeling, less flowery.
Mm-hmm.
It's there. And as you can see, it was a lot cheaper than Excellent or Muse was for the same output. As I just see, we have only 10 minutes left of the class. It's the moment where you could, if there's still questions in the chat, that would be the perfect time to answer them before we go over.
Beard's asking what were you clicking on to get the picture and the stat on what you're using? So I imagine it's your credit he's looking for. Want to show where you get the credit information from again? So the gear icon.
Oh yes, the credit, it's the gear icon up here. And then you can here on show recent activity. It shows you what you were using your credits on recently. You can also toggle here to get a little pop-up when the generation is finished, which shows up for like a fraction of a second up here. So
Very
you see
quickly.
that, yeah, it's very fast. It's like, oh, barely noticed it. But it's also a good indicator when something generates longer that the generation is finally finished.
Mm-hmm.
You can toggle it on or off. Okay. Any other questions?
Great class.
No questions? Okay, then let's see if I have some other things. I will give you the variations. You will get both this chapter and the guided write prompts in the class document so that you can look this up, how this is structured. Like now with the bigger boxes, you have really space to put in like this information that you may or may not need to guide the AI to write the way you want it to. And some things about the prompts. I usually use these brackets for instructions, like this information about the style that I want or the focus of the scene. And if I want to add some sort of context, I would put this into parentheses. Since I'm not 100% sure if this actually makes a difference, but for me personally, square brackets looks more like instructions, and like parentheses is something that you'd rather also see in like summaries. Or maybe it's just my brain that thinks that way, that you can put like context. Yeah, hasn't been back since high school. No, high school. That like, if it's like story stuff, I put it in parentheses. It helps me to differentiate. Maybe it also helps the AI to keep track of this. Something else, if you have noticed here, I didn't say.
Can you send us your YouTube link for your video? Because you put it on your YouTube faster than you put it on. Yeah, people like
it may take some time to put this up since I'll be away next week. So Michelle may actually be faster, but I will be looking up for the YouTube in a minute. But one thing I wanted to tell you is that this prefer showing over telling. As you can notice, this is more of a positive command.
Oh, hi everyone.
Sorry, I turned on your YouTube and it started by itself. Sorry.
Sorry. I was like, oh my God, I'm talking. Well, how is this possible? Anyway, this prefers showing over telling is in a positive way instead of saying don't show, no, don't tell, show, don't tell. This was what I was saying. Since some AI models have issues with negative commands, since for example, you say, don't use passive voice, but they kind of don't see the don't and are like, oh, use passive voice. It's like this thing about don't think of a pink elephant. So it automatically thinks about using passive voice. The more modern and newer models don't have this issue so much, but I still prefer to give it positive commands. So instead of don't use passive voice, I would say use active voice. And that works quite well. But something to really keep in mind is that the AI models evolve over time, so that, as we also saw a little bit today, a prompt that works today may not work the same after an update or with a different model. And also something to keep in mind, we are the authors, so sometimes it's quicker to tweak the text manually rather than spending time perfecting a prompt. If you get something that's close to your vision, just go with it, and you can often just use this in a way with less work instead of trying to find the perfect wording for your prompts. Okay, we still have a few minutes, so some other thing that I like to do is using the AI for brainstorming. However this works also depends on the model and may change. But I like to do something like, let's stick with basic and give it plenty and a bit creativity. And then I go and ask something like, give me 5 suggestions how this scene could continue. Now it doesn't have much to work on, so I'm curious if it will actually give me a list or if it just writes something. But that's also a way I use Write for brainstorming. Now I just wrote something. But sometimes it works. Sometimes it also helps if you add avoid prose. Oh, a list, not a list. See if this works. But just with those cheaper models, it's also just fun to play around a bit with it to see what it works. And now you get a little list with ideas what she may be doing next for the scene. Could step outside. This is almost little prompts how you could continue. So you wanders down the main street, throughout the town square, turn to the cafe. But that's another way you could use this. And something that I also like to do is to go in a blank document, turn off my story Bible, and use auto write to just see what, I don't know, this model would give me if I would just let it run free without telling it anything. That's a good way to figure out the voice of a model and to see how the AI model would naturally develop a story without any guidance. Okay, this is very interesting. Mia was always prepared to scout a world. She could sense it in the distorted signals from the sun and whispers in atmosphere. This sounds like it could be an interesting science fiction book. The quantum engines and push across the light years to another planet. I think this is also something that shows how Muse can shine if you just give it the reins. But now I think we're on the hour. If you have any questions left, put them in the chat and I can still get to them. It looks like the chat is clear. Okay, then it's time to say thank you. First, a special thanks to my co-hosts, Tomas and Manon, for their amazing support today. And of course, a big thank you to all of you showing up today and bringing all your curiosity and engagement. And if you have a moment, please leave a rating and a review to help us know what's working and what we can improve in this class. You will get an email like a couple minutes after the class is closed, usually. And with this, I wish you a happy Sunday, happy writing, and hope to see you again soon in class. Thank you and bye-bye.